This is episode 233 of the Super League Pod. It's the one where we talk a lot about Justin Holbrook, a little about other news, and plenty more about the big bad news story from a Saturday in the south of France where the words of Elton John were taken as instructions by the Catalans and Wire players and fans alike. There's some positive news stories around that, and plenty of begrudging praise handed out across the board. Some wonderful wordplay from your fan reviews too, although, disclaimer, if you don't like the term dickhead, this episode is not for you. If you're cool with it, then buckle up, because it's SLP time. Hello listeners, welcome to episode 233 of the Super League Pod. It's a Wigan Saints derby this week, because you've got me, regular Mark Wigan fan, and we're joined this week by Dave Powell, who's a St Helens fan celebrating a league leader. Do you celebrate them? Are you celebrating this year, David?
I think we are going to celebrate this year. It's going to be slightly delayed because I think we only get it against Castleford after the Challenge Cup final. So who knows, Mark? Maybe we're showing off 2 trophies that evening.
Well, welcome along to the show anyway. You've been
Thanks,
a guest
Mark.
a couple of times, but it's great to have you for a full episode. It's the perfect episode. We were just talking before we started recording, not just the League Leaders Shield win, but also the big news this week. The big news story is obviously Justin Holbrook leaving St Helens, so we'll get to that in a little while. Before we get to that, I just want to let everyone know that this episode is sponsored by Sarah's Bookcase. Sarah sells Usborne books with access to over 3,000 titles from baby to teenager. There's something for everyone. She also works with schools, so please get in touch to find out how you can get free books for local schools. Find out more at facebook.com/Sarah's Bookcase. You can find a link to that on our blog post at superleaguepod.com as well. Coming up on the show then, David, we've got fan views from all the Super League games. We've got news of retirements, new deals, and the big coach departure. We're going to have to talk about what happened in France. But first, we'll probably have some happier shout-outs. So, in fact, no, before we do some shout-outs, you've been on holiday recently, and it sounds epic. So let the listeners know where you've been and what you did, because Saints are reaching some heights this year, but I don't think they quite matched what you achieved over the last couple of weeks.
Well, I've been away. I missed a couple of episodes of the Super League Pod, which I've been catching up on this week. I went with some friends, and we climbed a mountain called Stock Kangri, which is in the Ladakh region of the Himalayas in India.
Stock Kangri?
Stock Kangri.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said Stock Angry. I thought that was the mountain that the Warrington fans were climbing on Saturday evening.
Yeah. You can Google it. It's STOKKANGRI. And anyway, it was kind of a 2-week holiday, of which sort of 7-8 days were trekking and then summit day, and it's 6,160 meters, something like that, so a little over 20,000 feet, and very snowy and lots of ice axes and crampons and ropes and things like that. So it was a lot of fun, but very hard work.
So is that the highest you've ever been?
Yes, it's the highest I've been, and it's the highest I ever will be, I can assure you. I did Everest Base Camp a few years ago, and we went up Kalapathar the following day, which is sort of 5,500 and something meters. But this was significantly higher, and a proper mountain to climb with, as I say, people being roped up together and crampons on and ice axes and all that sort of thing. So it's a proper adventure. I had an absolute ball. It was a great time, but it was definitely a one-off, not something I'm going to do again, Mark.
It sounds fantastic, and you always hear about the Everests and stuff like that. It's really cool to hear more about some of the other big mountains that I guess get a bit less traffic, which makes it a bit more enjoyable. Surely.
Yeah. I mean, I think there were about six teams up at base camp tackling it over a few days. It's definitely not as busy as Everest. There are many mountains in that area that are over 6,000 metres. This just happens to be one that's a particularly attractive one and is relatively accessible in comparison to some of them. But that whole region, that Ladakh region, is incredibly beautiful. Lovely place. I would definitely. Maybe this should be for the recommend section, but I definitely recommend people go and visit if they can, because it's beautiful around Leh and that part of the world.
Excellent stuff, and maybe we can take some rugby balls with us next time we all descend on the Indian Himalayas. Brilliant. Okay, I just going to shout out a few things, and I want to remind everyone to fill in the follow-up surveys. Check your emails. David, I got your out of the country email when you were away, but yeah, you're back now, so make sure you fill in that survey, and everyone else as well. If you haven't got it, anyone, do let us know, and we'll send you the links to the follow-up surveys and a copy of the report from the big fan survey we conducted between Easter and Magic Weekend. We're going to keep mentioning it because we think it's fantastic, and we know that Super League are listening to the feedback now. People who gave feedback on the Magic Weekend to the Super League actually might have got their offer codes through this week to get a discount on Grand Final tickets as a thank you for filling in Magic Weekend surveys. So obviously they are listening to what we are telling them. The other thing to shout out, I mentioned it on last week's show and I forgot about it for a couple of days, but it's now live on our Facebook page. Thanks to Tom Andrews, there's a Challenge Cup final ticket prize draw live on our Facebook page. So do head over to facebook.com/Super League Pod, like our page, you'll see the post there. All you need to do is comment on the post with tagging the person that you're going to take with you to the match if you win the tickets. We're going to close the competition on next Sunday, which will be the 11th of August, and then we will do the draw on the Monday evening when we record that episode of the podcast, which will be episode 234 of the podcast, I think. Yeah, and then obviously the winners will find out that way. So do listen to the podcast next week for that. And then the final shout out is a little bit of a charity kind of giving back to the SLP community as well type thing, but one of our occasional guest hosts and lapsed fan reviewer, because he hardly ever sends in fan reviews now, but occasionally turns up on the show, and that's our friend Dom Hodgson, who also is one of the sponsors of the show. Now, last year, you might remember, he didn't get his charity forgot to enter him basically into the Great North Run. So as a result, being the guy that he is, instead of feeling down about it too much, he decided to organise his own Great Hodge Run, which he did in Temple Newsam Park in Leeds, where there's a running track, and we ran around 2 games of football. It was very fun. And he's doing it again this year, all in aid of Martin House Charity, which does great things for young people and young people's families when they're going through serious illnesses in the Leeds area. So it's at Temple Newsam Park on the 1st of September. And basically, if anyone's interested in attending that event, do let us know and we'll send you the details, and then you can all get along. You can dress up if you want, you can raise money for charity if you want, you can make donations to Dom's charity if you want, or you can just come along and support and be involved. You don't have to do the full half marathon length that he would do, which is 52.5 laps of the track, I believe. You don't have to do the full length. You can come and dip in, do a few laps to spur Dom and the team on, or stay for the whole morning. So there you go. That's a great cause, isn't it?
Too right. It really is. Nothing but admiration for Dom, what he does with his running. It's very inspirational.
And when we say running as well, if you're not a runner, don't worry, neither's Dom. You don't have to be expected to run the whole or even any of the distance.
Well, if Fat Boy Robs can do it, then anybody can do it, in my view.
Or old Phil Nadin with his half normal human sized legs. He did the full course as well. So he did twice the course really last year. So lots of people from the SLP family get along there, and to be honest, it was a really nice experience last year. So if people want to join in, do join in. Again, that's September the 1st, in the morning of September the 1st this year. Okay, that's all our shout outs done, and a cool catch up on your exciting trip to the Himalayas. We're now, though, going to talk about some news, and you might not find this as exciting, David. So news now from around the world of rugby league, and we start with the finally announced, not much of a secret really, though, was it, news that Justin Holbrook will leave Super League leaders St Helens at the end of the season after being named boss of Australian NRL side Gold Coast Titans from 2020. Holbrook, who's 43, will be looking to guide the Saints to a treble before moving his side atop a Super League. They're in the Challenge Cup final. In fact, they've won the Super League Leaders Shield already. They're in the Challenge Cup final, but is going back to the NRL after 2.5 years with the Saints. He said, "It's been an extremely tough decision to leave such a great club. Since I arrived, everyone at the club and the fans have been brilliant to myself and my family, and we have loved our time here. Eamon McManus, Mike Rush and the board wanted me to stay and did everything they could, which I greatly appreciated, but an opportunity to return home to the NRL is what I feel I need to do. It is very difficult, as the only time I would get an opportunity like that is when we are winning and doing well as a club, which makes the decision even harder for me." Before we get your Saints fan take on it, we had Shoddy and Mungo, Alan, one of our other co-hosts. He got in touch. He said, "Do we reckon Richard Marshall has earned the chance to take on the big job? I'd like to think so." We'll put a pin in that until we've had your thoughts. And Tom Andrews said, "Having saved the Saints from certain relegation with very limited funds, as reported by Fox, he moves back home to do the same with Gold Coast."
Interesting take by Fox News there, but there you go. Yeah. Not the first time they've made something up.
No, not at all. But your feelings on this, obviously, as a Saints fan, a Saints season ticket holder who's seen an almighty revolution under Holbrook, and it must have been great times, it must be sad news.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all knew, I mean, in a way, as he says in his announcement, you know, we all knew that if he did a good job with us, which we all wanted him to do, that we would probably lose him, if not at the end of his 2.5-year contract, which he had, then, you know, shortly thereafter. He's been an absolute revelation at Saints. I mean, I think I've said to you before privately, Mark, he's improved every single player that we've had at the club. And the squad that he's got there now is very much the same squad, bar 3 players that were available to Kieran Cunningham when he was coaching 2.5 years ago. So I think he's done a truly remarkable job. I honestly believe, given the resources he's had available, he's the best coach I've seen at Saints. And that includes sort of, you know, coaches like Daniel Anderson, who won a lot with the club.
Never lost a Challenge Cup game.
Yeah, I mean, I just think what he's done with individual players has been remarkable, irrespective of, you know, whether he goes on to win, you know, the big 2 at the end of the season or not. I just think he's been superb for us. So it is a big loss for the club, and it'll take some replacing. You know, clearly, Mike Rush did a very good job, and the board did a good job last time in finding Justin. But I think it'll be hard pushed to find someone as good as that again.
Yeah, it was actually a very good recruitment process. I remember talking about it at the time on Super League Pod when you went through that recruitment process. So an aspect of it was done blind, wasn't it? Resumes were sort of put in front without names, without clubs attached, but with experience, with interview answers, that sort of stuff to help whittle the shortlist down and make the decision based on who might be best to turn around the culture of a club that, in reality, even though you'd won a title in 2014 and finished top of the league that year as well, remarkably, you hadn't done it in the way that everyone had become used to with that Saints side. You know, the entertainers, you were not that for a good portion of years.
No, absolutely right, Mark. We hadn't really hit our straps since sort of 2006, 7, 8, that sort of period. So it'd been quite a fallow time for Saints, and we'd really lost our way, I think, as a club, not just on the field but off the field. And I think Holbrook, credit to the board as well, but I think Holbrook has really transformed us on the pitch and off the pitch, and really linked the club and the players back in with the fans again. So it'll be